94. 4 priests are fated at the royal garden. One fiend vainly longs for sensual joys. We were telling you about Pilgrim Sun and his 2 companions, who followed the summons official to the gate of the court. The custodian of the yellow gate immediately notified them to enter. The 3 of them walked in together and stood still, without, however, even bowing. Which 3 are the noble disciples of the sage monk, our royal son-in-law? Asked the king. What are your names? Where do you live? For what reason did you become priests? What scriptures are you seeking? Pilgrim strode forward and wanted to ascend to the main hall. The guardians of the throne at once shouted, "Stop! If you have anything to say, speak up at once. We people who have left the family," said Pilgrim, smiling, "will advance 1 step when we have the chance to take 1 step." After him 8 rules and Sha monk also drew near. Fearing that their vulgarity might upset the throne, the elder, standing on one side, stepped forward and said, "Disciples, His Majesty is asking for your origins. You should present a proper reply." When Pilgrim saw that his master was standing and waiting on one side, he could not refrain from yelling, "Your Majesty, you slight others and you slight yourself. If you have taken in my master as the royal son-in-law, why do you make him stand? The world addresses your daughter's husband as honored man. How can an honored man not be allowed to sit?" When he heard that, the king paled with fright. He would have withdrawn himself immediately from the hall had he not feared impropriety. Forcing himself to be bold, he asked his attendants to bring out an embroidered cushion for the Tang monk to sit on. Only then did Pilgrim memorialize to him, saying, "Old Monkey's ancestral home is located at the Water Curtain, Cave of the Flower Fruit Mountain, in the Aulai Kingdom of the East Purvavidiha continent. My father was heaven, my mother, earth. I was born when a stone burst. Once a perfected man's pupil. I mastered the great way, ere returning to my divine home, to congregate with my kind in the cave heaven of a blessed land. In the ocean I subdued dragons. On the mountains I captured beasts, having wiped out the register of death, and placed our names in the book of life. I was appointed the great sage, equal to heaven, to enjoy the towers of jade, and roam the treasure lofts. I joined the celestial immortals, to sing and revel every day, living in the sage's realm. I had great pleasures each morning, for disrupting the Peaches festival, and causing great havoc in heaven. I was subjugated by Buddha, and pinned beneath the mountain of 5 phases, with but iron pellets for my hunger, and copper juice for my thirst, and not a drop of tea or rice for 500 years. Fortunately my master left the land of the east, as he headed for the west. Guanyin delivered me from heaven's calamity, free of my great ordeal. I made submission as a student of yoga. My old name's Wukong, but people address me as Pilgrim." When the king heard such an important pedigree, he was so impressed that he left the dragon couch immediately to walk forward and take the elder's arm. "Royal son-in-law," he said, "this must be our affinity ordained of heaven that we may have you as a divine kinsman." Tripitaka thanked him profusely and asked him to ascend his throne once more. Then the king asked, "Who is your second noble disciple?" Sticking out his snout to display his authority, 8 rules said, "In his previous incarnation, Old Hog was most fond of pleasure and sloth. My whole life was chaotic, my nature confused and my mind deluded. I never knew heaven's height or earth's thickness, nor could I perceive this world's breadth and length. In that leisurely existence, I met suddenly a realized immortal, who, with half a sentence, untied my net of retribution, and with 2 or 3 words, punched through my door of calamity. Immediately coming to myself, I took him at once as a teacher. With care I cultivated the work of 2/8. and smelted 4, and after the time of 3 times 3. My work done, I ascended into the palace of heaven. By the great kindness of the Jade Emperor, I was appointed Marshal of Heavenly Reeds, in command of the troops of Heaven's River, roaming freely throughout the cosmos, for getting drunk at the Peaches Festival, and dallying with Chang'o. I was stripped of my rank, and exiled to this mortal world. An erroneous incarnation made me born in the form of a hog, a resident of Mount Fuling. I committed boundless evils. When I met Guanyin, who pointed out the way of virtue, I submitted to the Buddhist faith, to give the Tang monk protection on his way to the Western Heaven, to bow and seek the wondrous texts. My religious name's Wu Neng, but they call me 8 Rules. These words made the king's spleen shake and his heart quiver, and he hardly dared look at the speaker. Our idiot, however, became more energetic than ever. Shaking his head, sticking out his snout, and raising both ears, he laughed uproariously. Fearing again that the throne might be terrified, Tripitaka snapped, 8 Rules, behave. Only then did 8 Rules lower his hands, putting one over the other, and stand there, pretending to be a gentleman. Then the king asked once more, for what reason did the 3rd noble disciple become a priest? Pressing his palms together, Sha Monk said, Old Sand was originally a mortal man. Fear of the karmic wheel made me seek the way, roaming cloud-like the edges of the sea, and wandering at the shores of heaven. As always my frock and alms bowl followed me. Long I taught my mind and spirit to stay put. For such sincerity, I found an immortal mate. I nurtured the baby, and married the fair girl. When my merit reached 3,000, my work harmonized the 4 signs. I went beyond heaven's bound, to bow at the mysterious height, made the great curtain-raising warrior. I attended the phoenix and dragon chariot, with appointed rank of general. At the Peaches Festival, also, I dropped and broke a crystal chalice, for which I was exiled to the flowing sand river, my head and features transformed. I sinned by taking lives. Fortunately the Bodhisattva, going far to the land of the east, persuaded me to repent, and wait for a Buddhist son of the Tang court, who would go seek scriptures at the Western Heaven. Henceforth I stood in this renewal, and sought once more the great awakening. I use the river as my surname. My religious name's Wu Jing, and they address me as monk. When the king heard that, he was filled with great joy, but also great terror. What brought him joy was the fact that his daughter had taken a living Buddha in for a husband, but what brought him terror was that the man's disciples were actually 3 monstrous deities. In that very moment, the chief imperial astronomer arrived to say, the date of the wedding has been set for the fine day of Renzi, the 12th day of this month in this year. That day ought to be felicitous for the entire family, and it is thus fitting for a marriage to take place. What day is today? Asked the king. Today is the 8th, replied the astronomer. The day of motion, when the gibbons come to present fruits. It is thus a day appropriate for receiving the worthies and setting appointments. Exceedingly pleased, the king immediately asked the attendants to sweep out some towered buildings in the imperial garden, so that the royal son-in-law and his 3 disciples could use them for lodging. Thereafter he asked for the preparation of the wedding banquet, so that the princess could get married. All his subjects reverently obeyed. After the king had retired from court, the various officials dispersed, and we shall leave them for the moment. We tell you now, instead, about Tripitaka and his disciples, who went together to the imperial garden. As it was getting late, a vegetarian meal was set out. Delighted, 8 Rules said, it's about time we eat after one whole day. Those in charge toted in whole loads of rice and noodles. 8 Rules ate and ate. The more they brought, the more he ate. He did not stop till his guts were stuffed and his stomach was bloated. In a little while, Lights were brought in and bedding spread out for each of them, so that they could sleep. When the elder saw that they were by themselves, he shouted angrily at Pilgrim. "Wukong! You wretched ape! You put me in a bind every time. I told you that all I wanted was to have the rescript certified, and I told you not to go near the Festoon Tower. Why did you insist on taking me there to look? Now, have you seen anything good? We've ended up in this pickle. What are we going to do now?" Trying to placate him with a smile, Pilgrim said. The master's statement that his deceased mother, who also met the person destined for her, by the tossing of an embroidered ball, whereupon the two of them became man and wife, seems to indicate a longing for the past. Only because of that did Old Monkey lead you to the tower. Moreover, I thought of the words of that abbot from the benefactor of orphans' gold-spreading monastery, and I wanted to use this occasion to examine the true and the false. Just now when I looked at the king, I noticed that his complexion was somewhat dark and swarthy. But I haven't been able to look at the princess to determine what she was like. What would you be able to do if you saw the princess?" asked the elder. Pilgrim said, "The moment these fiery eyes and diamond pupils of Old Monkey see her face, they will be able to discern truth and falsehood, good and evil, wealth and poverty. Then I will be able to act to distinguish the right from the deviant." With loud giggles, both Eight Rules and Sha Monk said, "Elder brother must have recently learned the art of physiognomy. Those physiognomists," said Pilgrim, "ought to be regarded only as my grandsons." "Stop gabbing," snapped Tripitaka. "It appears now that they are bent on taking me in. What should we do, really?" Pilgrim said,